Breaking free from negative patterns is one of the most challenging yet liberating things that we can do. And trust me, I know firsthand how difficult it is. I grew up struggling with finding my voice, constantly battling self-esteem despite the exterior that I presented to the world, and feeling responsible for the emotions of pretty much everyone around me. I was caught in the push and pull of wanting to be true to myself while also keeping the peace and showing empathy to others. Setting boundaries felt impossible because I had been silently conditioned to believe that prioritizing my own well-being meant I was being selfish. But as I worked through these struggles, something really incredible happened. In my early 30s, I started focusing on my own personal growth. I became better not just for myself, but for everyone around me, my children, my family, friends, and clients. It was a revelation. My healing didn't create distance, it created deeper, healthier connections. In my 40s and now 50s, I've turned those lessons into my strengths. I use my voice to lift up others, teach what I've learned, and inspire other women to do the same. Negative family patterns don't always look like outright abuse or even neglect. Sometimes they show up in much more subtle ways, like constant criticism, unrealistic expectations, emotional neglect, or even being taught that love is something that you have to earn. If we are not aware of these subtle patterns that can be deeply embedded in our fabric, we will continue the pattern, passing it on to our children and ultimately our grandchildren. These patterns shape our subconscious beliefs and affect our confidence, our relationships, and even the way that we process stress. Research in psychology shows that many of our core beliefs about ourselves and the world are formed in the early childhood years. The brain, particularly the limbic system, which governs emotions, absorbs these experiences and uses them as a framework for how we respond to life. If we grow up feeling like our worth is tied to what we can do for others, we carry that into adulthood, often at the expense of our own happiness. For years, well into my 20s, I found myself in that exact place. I constantly prioritized other needs before my own, afraid that prioritizing myself first would somehow mean I was failing as a daughter, friend, and partner. Because I felt responsible for the emotions of those around me, I became a master at reading the room, adjusting myself to make sure everyone else was comfortable, even when I wasn't. The problem was that I was living for approval rather than authenticity. I had learned to suppress my own needs to keep relationships intact, but the cost was pretty high. I felt exhausted, resentful, and deep down, completely unseen. It wasn't until I truly started investing in my own personal growth through therapy, self-reflection, a perpetual path of learning, reading, and research, while I also began surrounding myself with people who encouraged my evolution. It was then that I realized something profound. When I took care of myself first, everyone benefited. I learned that it was not selfish to take care of myself first. It was, in fact, the path to be able to help others evolve as well. The better I became at setting boundaries, the healthier my relationships became. The more I worked on my confidence, the less I relied on external validation. And the more I honored my own needs, the better I was at showing up for others in ways that was not rooted in obligation, but in genuine love. Science backs this up. Studies on attachment theory and neuroplasticity reveal that while our early experiences shape our beliefs and behaviors, our brains are actually capable of rewiring. When we intentionally challenge old patterns and replace them with new, healthier responses, we are literally changing the structure of our minds. That means no matter how deeply ingrained belief is, whether it's I'm not enough or I have to keep everyone happy, it's possible to rewrite that story. And that's exactly what I did. A close friend of mine went through something similar. She grew up in a home where nothing she ever did was enough. Perfection was the standard, and love felt conditional on achievement. As an adult, she became a chronic overachiever, constantly seeking external validation and terrified of making mistakes. But one day, she realized that impossible standards she was holding herself to weren't hers. They were just echoes from her past. She started to challenge those beliefs, rewrite her inner dialogue, and recognize that she was worthy just exactly as she was. And over time, it changed everything. Another common pattern is the absence of support. Maybe you've experienced this. Maybe you have family members who don't show up when you need them, or downplay your struggles, or who dismiss your dreams. That lack of validation can make you feel invisible, like your emotions don't matter. But here's something I've learned. We don't need their validation to be worthy. We can learn to validate ourselves. We can build our own support system, friends, mentors, and communities that lift us up instead of holding us down. There is a pattern of enabling. Have you ever had a family member who constantly fixes things for you, never letting you struggle or learn from mistakes? Or maybe they made excuses for toxic behaviors, like brushing things under the rug instead of addressing them. Now, while this might seem like love on the surface, it often creates a sense of powerlessness. When we aren't given the space to take responsibility for our own lives, we start believing that we're incapable. But here's the truth. We are more than capable. We are strong, resilient, and fully equipped to create the life that we want. Breaking free from these patterns takes courage, self-awareness, patience, and a willingness to step into the discomfort. But the freedom on the other side is well worth it. I learned to set boundaries, not just to protect myself, but to create relationships built on mutual respect instead of obligation. I learned to listen to my own needs and prioritize them without guilt. And most importantly, I learned that my growth doesn't take away from anyone else. It elevates everyone around me. The science of emotional intelligence shows that when we cultivate self-awareness and emotional regulation, we become better communicators, better partners, and better parents. It's not selfish to grow. In fact, it's necessary. And as women, especially those of us who have spent years pouring ourselves into others, it's time that we start pouring into ourselves too. So if you are in that place of feeling stuck, if you recognize some of these patterns I've mentioned in your own life, know that you're not alone and you're not powerless. You have the ability to rewrite your story and step into a life that is aligned with your truth rather than your conditioning. And when you do, you won't just change your life, you'll inspire everyone around you to do the same. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you struggled with breaking free from any unhealthy patterns? What has helped you the most? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. And if you're on a journey of personal growth, be sure to check out my other video on reclaiming your vibrancy. It is a game changer. Until next time, take care of yourself and be kind to yourself. And remember, you are worthy exactly the way that you are.